Sean cheated on me. We had been together for 7 years, married for 4. In the end, he couldn't resist the novelty of a younger girl and the way she looked at him with pure admiration. The day I found out, I sat by the window until sunrise and decided to take revenge. She destroyed my marriage, I would destroy her education and her future. He betrayed my love, I would take away his money and his happiness. No one would get out of this unscathed. Chapter 1. When Sean came downstairs, I had just finished checking Lillian's latest WeChat post using a burner account. A young girl in a white shirt and denim skirt, radiating youth and energy. Caption, date. Let's go. I looked up at him, same white shirt, jeans, even in his 30s. He still somehow carried the vibe of a college boy. Clearly, they had planned to match. Sean walked over, gently ruffled my hair, and said with a soft smile, "I'm heading out." I couldn't deny it, his face had been what drew me in back then, especially when he smiled, handsome, warm, disarming. But now, it only felt ironic. I smiled back and watched him leave. This was probably the last time we would be gentle with each other. After today, he would likely lose control. Maybe the storm would come tonight. I had spent 6 months setting this up, all for the sake of making sure no one walked away unhurt. As I smiled, tears slid from the corners of my eyes. 11 years together. I had given him everything, but half a year ago, he betrayed me. The day I realized Sean was cheating had seemed completely ordinary. We were having dinner, just like always. We usually used that time to share our day. We were both busy, so we cherished these quiet moments together. But that night, he kept drifting off. From time to time, he would reply to messages on his phone, a faint smile playing on his lips, one he didn't even seem aware of. The third time he picked up his phone, I frowned, set down my chopsticks, and looked at him. "What are you looking at? Why do you need to reply so urgently?" He noticed my irritation, put his phone away, and coaxed me with a smile. "Someone from the project team is still working overtime, there are some urgent issues." "All right, let's just eat. Don't be upset." As he spoke, he placed my favorite fishtail into my bowl. "Your favorite." I looked at him, a strange sense of unease rising in my chest. After all, I knew him too well. That night, we ate, talked, and went to bed like usual. But he didn't know, I never fell asleep. Chapter 2. The night was eerily quiet. I quietly picked up his phone. We trusted each other, even though I knew his password. I had never checked his phone before. And yet tonight, I did something I used to despise. I sat on the sofa in the study, scrolling through his phone. There were no unfamiliar contacts in his chats, and the project group chat had been silent during dinner. I opened his contacts list. I was still pinned at the top, but as I scrolled, I noticed someone with a Minnie Mouse avatar. I tapped into the chat. There was nothing, not even the initial greeting when they first added each other. I opened Moments. As I scrolled, I prayed that there was nothing inappropriate between them. Her posts were vibrant, full of life, photos, selfies. She was confident, lively. When she smiled, she looked like a sunflower. Even I thought she was beautiful. 2 months back, I saw Sean's side profile in one of her posts, sharp and distinct. Caption: "Got to interview my idol today. So happy." As expected of the outstanding senior I've admired for so long. The background was Sean's office. Maybe that didn't mean anything. My hand trembled as I held the phone, but I still clung to hope. I scrolled further back and found a group photo of them together. There were many people in the picture. They stood far apart. The background looked like the anniversary celebration of a university. I remembered, he had told me his alma mater invited him back to give a speech. I had been on a business trip and couldn't attend. That day, I had even excitedly reminisced with him over the phone about our college days. Scrolling further back, there were no earlier overlaps between them. Now it seemed clear, that anniversary event was when they met. From that photo onward, memories began to piece themselves together. The day she posted about a trendy restaurant, Sean had told me he was working overtime. The day she posted about a revolving restaurant, he said he had a client meeting. The day she posted a photo with dolphins, he was, once again, working overtime. Even the trendy bread he brought me, the one he proudly asked me to praise, had been part of a date she posted about. There was no trace of Sean in her photos. But I knew that wasn't an excuse I could hide behind. I took screenshots of everything, then quietly placed his phone back where it belonged. Sitting by the window, I realized my hands and feet had gone ice cold. I wrapped my arms tightly around myself, curling into the corner of the window seat. Tears had long since soaked my face in silence. My mind was in chaos. All I could feel was a bone-deep cold. Chapter 3. Sean and I had been in love for 11 years, dating for 7, married for 4. I thought we would go on like this forever. We had promised each other we would never stray. But now, perhaps I had defined forever too early. At this moment, I hated how well I knew him. I met Sean in our freshman year, at the cafeteria of a university. That day, I went to get food and immediately noticed a handsome boy serving dishes at the counter. Even with a mask on, his looks couldn't be hidden. His brows were slightly furrowed as he focused on the ladle in his hand. As I stepped closer, I heard the cafeteria aunt scolding him. "Shake your hand a little. Don't give so much meat, okay? Okay. That's enough. Don't give so much." The student getting food rolled their eyes while thanking him. "Thanks, handsome." This back and forth only made Sean more flustered. Standing there, I found it amusing and walked up to the same counter, watching him awkwardly try to shake the ladle, while the aunt sighed beside him. It was honestly funny. That afternoon, we ran into each other again in the library. We approached from opposite directions, both reaching for the same book, and looked at each other in surprise. This time, he wasn't wearing a mask. Sharp features, clean lines. Only one thought crossed my mind. He's really good looking. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. Just as I was frozen in place, he let go of the book, picked up another one, and turned to leave. Not a single word. That annoyed me a little. After all, I was a confident, strikingly attractive woman, so I decided I'd go back to his counter for dinner, just to watch him fumble again and feel better about myself. But less than 2 hours later, we met again, at a debate club meeting. We were both freshmen, newly joined members. That's when I learned his name, Sean. After the meeting ended, I saw him leaving in a hurry. A thought crossed my mind, and I quickly chased after him. "Sean." He turned back to look at me, backlit by the light. That moment felt like it struck straight into my heart. "What is it?" His voice was deep and magnetic. I walked up beside him, smiling brightly, my eyes full of warmth. "Sean, we've run into each other 3 times today. Haven't you heard? Meeting once is coincidence, meeting 3 times means it's fate." He listened, the corners of his lips lifting into a soft smile, his gaze gentle, but what he said wasn't exactly sweet. "Never heard that. But Nadia, I'm going to be late for my part-time job. See you." And just like that, he turned and hurried off again. Well, flirting wasted on a fool. Still, that evening, I went to his counter for dinner. This time, he wasn't flustered like at noon. He smiled as he served me food, and secretly gave me extra chicken. We grew closer naturally, understanding each other more and more. The day we officially got together was nothing special. After a club meeting, we stayed behind to organize materials. Then he walked me back to my dorm. Downstairs, he took out a gift from his backpack, a star bracelet. The smile was gone from his eyes, replaced with nervousness. "Nadia, will you be my girlfriend?" I had never seen him so tense, his voice trembling slightly, even licking his lips after speaking. I smiled and nodded firmly. "Yes." Then I held out my wrist for him to put the bracelet on. It took him a long time, his hands were shaking the whole time. That night, we held each other for a long time. Back in my dorm, I rolled around on my bed in excitement. After 3 months of carefully making him fall for me, I had finally succeeded. We supported each other, promised trust, and sweetly made it through our university years. We overcame the so-called breakup after graduation curse, endured the hardships of starting a business, and stood at our wedding, promising a lifetime together, becoming a couple everyone envied. Over the years, we witnessed each other grow, both becoming outstanding in our own circles, and under my careful nurturing, He became gentle, considerate, mature, steady, still in great shape, only to become someone else's prize. Chapter 4. That night, I looked through the girl's selfies over and over again. I had to admit, she was beautiful. To be able to serve as staff at a university's anniversary event, and even interview outstanding alumni, she must be capable too. I tried to hypnotize myself. Maybe things weren't as bad as I thought. We had promised each other a lifetime of loyalty. We had promised trust. But the self-deception failed. I had always been someone decisive, someone who knew when to cut things off. Before I knew it, the sun had risen, and warmth slowly returned to my body, not wanting Sean to see me in such a miserable state. I pulled myself together and left early. When Sean called, I was already at the office. His just-woken voice was soft and slightly husky. "Wife, where did you go?" "I had something to do, so I came to the company early." "I left in a hurry and didn't wake you." I spoke calmly, carefully hiding any abnormality. "All right, remember to eat. Love you. Love you." We were used to saying "I love you" before hanging up. Used to sharing everything. Used to waking up and seeing each other. So how did things go off track? I leaned forward, supporting my head with both hands, my fingers unconsciously gripping my hair. A painful sigh escaped me as I forced myself to calm down. Then I sent the girl's photos to someone I knew, asking them to investigate her. Life went on as usual. That night's strange behavior from Sean never happened again. But I felt no sense of security at all, until I received information about the girl, and the stone in my heart finally stirred. The investigator was thorough. The girl's information was detailed. Lillian, from a neighboring city. Both parents were teachers at a prestigious high school. She had always been an excellent student, now a third-year computer science major at a university. Sean's direct junior. My suspicions were confirmed. The report included photos of Sean and her at trendy restaurants, a revolving restaurant, and a cafe below Sean's office building. There were no intimate gestures in the photos, but somehow, they looked harmonious. For some reason, I suddenly wanted to meet her. As it happened, a few days earlier, my graduate advisor had invited me back to give a talk and do an interview. On the day of the talk, my advisor and the department head accompanied me. I shared several case studies with the students. The response was excellent. Afterward, my advisor arranged an interview with the campus newspaper. I casually mentioned, "I heard from Sean that the student reporter who interviewed him last time was quite good." So my advisor specifically arranged for Lillian to come. She attended my entire talk. When the professors mentioned the sweet story between Sean and me, her expression visibly stiffened. I smiled and greeted her, deliberately adding, "I read your interview with my husband last time. It was very well written. I'm looking forward to an even better one this time." Her hand tightened around her bag. The brightness in her eyes, the one from her photos, was gone. The interview ended without much enthusiasm. Afterward, we had dinner with the professors and a few students, Lillian included. I didn't know why she didn't avoid it. At the table, under my subtle guidance, my advisor brought up stories about Sean and me several times. How we led the university debate team to win a national championship. How Sean often attended classes with me. I watched as Lillian's face grew paler and paler. And suddenly, bullying a young girl like this felt utterly meaningless. That night, when I returned home, Sean was sitting on the sofa, waiting for me, phone in hand. When he saw me, he stood up and came over. "How was your visit to your alma mater today? Why didn't you tell me you had a campus newspaper interview?" So, the girl had complained. I pretended not to know anything and glanced at him. The talk went well. My advisor was happy. The interview was arranged by them. How did you know about it?" His smile stiffened for a moment before he replied casually, "The student reporter who interviewed you is the same one who interviewed me. She added me on WeChat back then. After interviewing you, she told me, said we're a perfect match. Pretty sharp for a young girl." I smiled as I watched him lie so smoothly. Then tested him. "She didn't add me, though. Looks like in her eyes, Senior Shao holds a different status." At my words, the arm around me stiffened slightly. A moment later, he tightened his embrace and gently rocked me. "Are you jealous, honey?" I'm so happy you'd be jealous. But she probably added me because I'm her direct senior. You have to trust me. As he spoke, he rubbed his head against my neck and shoulder, his intentions obvious. But inside, I wanted to tear everything apart, to demand why he had betrayed me. Yet my rationality held me back. Right now, aside from those ambiguous photos, I had no real evidence. These 11 years had been too sweet. He had treated me too well. So well that my parents liked him more than me. So well that my friends trusted him completely. There wasn't a single person around me who thought he was capable of cheating. If I exposed everything now, I would be the one who lost. The anger inside me was like a wild horse, raging uncontrollably, desperate for release, but with nowhere to go. I wanted to tear the smile off his face. But in the end, I only said I was tired, and escaped into the bathroom. Chapter 5. That night, I woke up again in the middle of the night, looking at the man sleeping peacefully beside me. I had the overwhelming urge to stab him. I quietly picked up his phone again, opened Lillian's profile, still an empty chat window. Either he was being overly cautious, or he simply trusted that I would never check his phone. Her latest post was from that night, a cheerful selfie, captioned, "I feel comforted, happy." The previous post had been right after interviewing me that afternoon. Very sad. I knew it. Sean must have been the one who comforted her. Did they talk through voice messages? Text? What did he say? My head throbbed. My heart ached so badly that even my hand holding the phone trembled. Once again, he had no idea. I sat there until sunrise. The next day, I received the first draft of her interview article in my email. It was quite good. I replied with a simple okay. Neither of us had mentioned adding each other on WeChat the day before. And yet, she remained patient. Still, the investigator had given me a burner account that had already added Lillian. Every day, I became like a voyeur, scrolling through Lillian's posts. I despised myself for it. Gradually, I grew numb, calm, indifferent. The day before, her post read, "Looking forward to the amusement park tomorrow." The next day, like some kind of creep, I followed them. Sean had changed out of the suit he wore that morning, into a hoodie that matched hers. I stood just a few meters away, watching them hold hands and play. The girl was good at acting cute. She swayed his arm gently, looking up at him sweetly as she spoke. Words I couldn't hear. She was probably asking him to ride the roller coaster with her. I thought Sean would refuse. 8 years ago, when we came to an amusement park, I had forced him onto a roller coaster once. He threw up afterward and swore never to ride one again. But I was wrong. He smiled, rubbed her head, and went on it with her. I watched the roller coaster race forward, heard the screams, and reminded myself again and again, I will make them pay. After the ride, even though Sean's face was pale and his lips had lost all color, he still gently comforted the girl, who looked guilty. I followed them, watching them wear matching Mickey headbands, watching Sean gently wipe ice cream from Lillian's lips, watching them walk forward hand in hand, until suddenly, or perhaps after everything had built up to a breaking point, I stopped. I couldn't follow them any further. I stood there, frozen. People passed by, looked at me, brushed against me. Some even bumped into me. I didn't move, until a little girl, about 4 or 5 years old, walked up and handed me a tissue. "Auntie, don't cry." I looked down at her, my vision blurred. Only then did I realize my face was already soaked in tears. I took the tissue and forced a smile as I thanked her. That smile probably looked worse than crying. The little girl frowned seriously and said, "You're so pretty, Auntie. Crying doesn't look nice." She was right. I am beautiful. Sean really must have lost his conscience, blind as if his eyes had been fed to wolves. I didn't want to understand why he cheated, why he broke his promises. I just wanted to pull myself out of this. Life is long. 11 years is just 11 years. I'm only 30. My life isn't even halfway through yet. I turned and walked away. I didn't want him anymore, but the price would still have to be paid. Chapter 6. After returning home, I gradually calmed down. From the night I realized something was off with him until now. Half a month had passed. The constant desensitization, forcing myself to watch their interactions, combined with mounting disappointment, had finally outweighed all the sweetness and happiness we once shared. I organized every asset in the house, both movable and immovable. Since I majored in finance, I had always managed all our investments. I planned to spend 6 months turning this household into one drowning in debt, legally. Of course, the tricky part was Sean's company. He started his business in graduate school, and after 7 years, it had gone through several rounds of financing and was now on the brink of going public. Yes, at such a critical moment, he still chose to stray without regard for the consequences. That alone showed how important that girl was to him. I didn't know whether he had fully considered the consequences and still firmly chosen Lillian, or if he simply believed I would tolerate her existence for his sake and neither divorce him nor make a scene. As night deepened, he finally came home. He had changed out of the clothes he wore to the amusement park and was back in the suit he had worn when he left in the morning. How did he switch between roles so effortlessly? When he saw me sitting on the sofa, he walked over and hugged me. Strangely, even though there was no unfamiliar scent on him, I still felt nauseated. He pulled me into his arms and spoke, tired, about the hardships of working overtime. In the corner he couldn't see, my eyes were filled with hatred. How could he treat me like a fool and expect me to believe him? To avoid arousing suspicion, I behaved as usual, sharing what I had done that day. I casually mentioned an investment opportunity introduced by a senior. He smiled and said I could decide everything. I had his full trust. Meanwhile, I gradually transferred funds and mortgaged property under the guise of investments. He didn't notice a thing. The day I saw the photo of him kissing Lillian on the street, I hired people to get close to those around her. I had them lure her into a lifestyle of high spending, exclusive parties, elite social circles, the glittering world of wealth and status, to nurture her desires and ambition. I watched her become increasingly materialistic. I watched Sean pay for everything. I elevated her onto a pedestal, waiting for the day she would fall. The day I saw photos of them entering a hotel, I completed the process of draining our household assets and pushing everything into debt. When Sean's personal funds started running low, unless he touched company money, I set things up so that Lillian would coax him into buying her a property, squeezing out every last bit of cash he had and forcing him to dip into company funds. Later, as I watched photos of them entering their new home, I planned to push Sean out of his company during the final round of financing. I imagined how painful it would be for him to see the child he had painstakingly nurtured for 7 years taken away from him. I did all of this silently, telling no one. We still played the role of a loving couple, keeping up the appearance of trust, sharing, and affection. Our acting was flawless. Now, everything was on the verge of erupting. The bitterness of these 6 months, only I truly understood it. By this morning, when Sean walked out wearing his white shirt and jeans, he would soon receive the divorce papers and a notice for property preservation. Lillian, too, would receive a lawsuit demanding the return of marital assets. Unfortunately for her, under my careful manipulation, even the property in question was worth only around $10 million. After Sean left, I went upstairs and packed up all his belongings. I had endured for half a year. Finally, I could throw him out for good. Chapter 7. When Sean came back, all his belongings had already been piled outside the door. The lock code had been changed, and his fingerprints had been removed. Irritated, he pressed the doorbell. Through the surveillance camera, I saw him clench his fists after ringing it, then helplessly let them fall. The good mood he had in the morning was completely gone, replaced by anxiety. I just quietly watched him pace back and forth, restless and uneasy. When he realized I wasn't opening the door, he took out his phone. Soon, my phone started ringing. It rang for a long time before I finally answered. Nadia, open the door. Let's talk this through. His voice carried defeat and pleading. I don't want to talk to you. Let the lawyers handle everything directly. There was silence on the other end. Through the camera, I saw him slump down by the door. Seeing the man I had loved for 11 years like this, my heart still ached. I had been with him from youth to adulthood, from innocence to maturity. I don't want a divorce. His voice was low and heavy. Then we'll see each other in court. Sean. I hung up. On the monitor, he stared blankly at his phone after the call ended. Just sitting there, separated by a single door. I lay on the bed in the bedroom. Yet it was another sleepless night. He sat outside the door the entire night, just sitting there. I didn't know what he was thinking. Regret? Guilt? Or resentment toward me? Finally, I opened the door helplessly. When he saw me, he struggled to stand up, his face full of pain. Sean, there's nothing to talk about. You and Lillian have both received the notices, right? As for her, I will recover the marital assets. As for you, I've filed for divorce. Everything will be handled by the lawyers. He stepped forward and grabbed my hand. Nadia, let's talk. We stood face to face like that for a long time, so close, yet so far. Nadia, we've loved each other for 11 years. Please, can we talk? He knew I had always been soft-hearted. 11 years? So what? You still betrayed me. What more is there to say? You know I don't tolerate betrayal. I let out a mocking laugh, though there was still unwillingness in my words. Nadia. He still looked at me with pain in his eyes. The face that once captivated me at first glance now seemed dull, its light gone. I turned slightly, signaling for him to come in. He sat on the sofa, head lowered, not daring to look at me. Nadia, I love you. I've never thought about divorcing you. Do you believe me? I let out a scoff and said nothing, letting him continue. I know you can't tolerate this. You probably won't forgive me this time. I received the notice yesterday, and the first thing I thought of was how painful it must have been for you when you found out. How long have you known? How long have you been hurting? Nadia, I love you. Even now, I still love you. Do you still believe that? He looked up at me with hope in his eyes. I found it utterly ironic. You're asking if I believe you? I don't dare to. Don't cheapen the word love. He probably found it ironic himself and let out a bitter chuckle. We've loved each other for 11 years. I always believed we would keep going like this, plain but happy. Then Lillian appeared, like a lively fish jumping into a calm fish tank. She stirred something in me that had long been still. She looked at me with admiration, said I was her idol. She gave me a sense of admiration, excitement, things I never felt with you. Gradually, I became greedy. I told her I had a wife and would never divorce. But she still threw herself at me like a moth to a flame, saying she only needed whatever time I could spare. Do you know? Over the years, I've rejected many people. They mocked me for being controlled by my wife, but I brushed it off. But when Lillian cried after being rejected, it got to me. I realized I couldn't turn her down anymore. I won't deny that I like her. Isn't my heart too big? I can't let go of either of you. Lillian won't affect you. She'll be obedient. Nadia, can we not divorce? Chapter 8. Listening to his absurd, ridiculous words. I didn't even know how to respond for a moment. What made him think I could accept such filthy thinking? So what if that girl was obedient? I honestly wanted to pry open his head and see what was inside. Had it been filled with water these past few years? Looks like time really doesn't help you understand a person. Sean, I suddenly can't understand you anymore. Maybe I can't understand men as a species at all. Stop making excuses for your cheating. I've always been loyal. If you want to talk, I'll let you speak, but not to hear this nonsense. I cut him off coldly. As for the money you spent on Lillian, I've already had it investigated. The property will be taken back, and the rest, less than $3 million, will be fully recovered. Don't even think about covering it for her before the divorce is finalized. You are not allowed to move a single cent. As for our current assets, we're in debt. The liabilities will be shared. The shares of your company under my name stay with me, and the ones under your name, I'll take 40%. Debt? Our household cash flow is strong. How could we possibly be in debt? The moment money was mentioned, he finally snapped out of his self-absorbed rambling. Investment losses. Everything is legal and traceable. The lawyers will provide you with the details. He suddenly let out a sarcastic laugh. You've been planning this for a long time, haven't you? See, this is exactly how you are, so rational, so self-centered. I looked at the sarcasm in his eyes and heard the judgment in his words. The anger I had been holding back finally erupted. Yes, I'm self-centered. Sean, for these 11 years, I've been completely devoted to you, never once betraying this family. It was you who destroyed everything I carefully built. Do you know what I've seen? I've seen your photos together at the school anniversary, the side profile shots she took of you, How you dressed younger just to match her. I've seen pictures of you kissing, going in and out of hotels, holding hands on outings. I even followed you to the amusement park, watching you accompany her while I stood just a few meters away, crying my eyes out. Do you understand? You're a complete bastard. I never imagined we'd end up like this. Yes, I'm petty, Sean, and I'm telling you, I won't let either of you have it easy. Get out. Like a madwoman. I grabbed the stunned Sean and shoved him out the door before he could react. Then I collapsed against the door, crying uncontrollably, releasing all my anger. Through the door, I heard him softly say, "I'm sorry, but what was the use?" The lawyers proceeded according to our plan, starting with the lawsuit against Lillian. After submitting evidence of Lillian's misconduct to a university, I waited for her punishment. After all, Sean and I were not nobodies. News of our marriage falling apart spread throughout the finance and tech circles in countless versions. His company's financing stalled, and Lillian, now infamous, had no chance of staying in that world. When I received a call from my parents, it was the first time I felt fear since planning the divorce. They had always liked Sean so much. They remembered what he liked to eat, his little habits. Every time we went back to my hometown, the table would be filled with his favorite dishes. They would proudly tell others, "My son-in-law is filial, treats Nadia well, takes care of the family." Now, facing this situation, I was afraid of disappointing them. "Mom," when I picked up the phone, I didn't even know what to say. "Nadia, have you had dinner?" "Yes, I have." "What about you?" "We've eaten too." "No matter what happens, take care of yourself." "Do you need your dad and me to come over?" My mother's voice lacked its usual cheerfulness. She didn't ask why we were divorcing, didn't try to persuade me to reconcile. Just that simple sentence made my eyes redden again. "I'm sorry, Mom. I've disappointed you. I didn't manage my marriage well. You liked him so much, now I've made you lose face in front of relatives and neighbors. My girl, you did nothing wrong. He's the one at fault. If a person isn't good, then we replace him, no big deal. We liked him because he treated you well. If you don't want him anymore, who does he think he is? What's face worth? Nothing matters more than my daughter. Nadia, your dad is here too. Don't be afraid. Do what you want." My father's firm words gave me a sense of peace I hadn't felt in these past 6 months. Growing up, I had always been the perfect child, never once disappointing them. This divorce, what I feared most was letting them down, worried that I would struggle alone. My parents came over to take care of me, which made me both laugh and feel deeply comforted. Later, I heard that Sean and his parents had contacted mine more than once, trying to persuade me not to make things worse. Each time, my parents refused. They stood firmly by my side, caring only about me. The legal process proceeded smoothly. Lillian was ordered to return the money as required. A university, after reviewing the evidence and conducting an investigation, expelled Lillian. A once promising top student had her future cut short. Chapter 9. The day after the judgment was issued, Lillian asked to meet me. She had never confronted me before, nor had she ever exposed her relationship with Sean through any channel. I was curious about what had allowed her to go this far. When we met again, she had lost the liveliness she once had. Her eyes were filled with anger and resentment when she looked at me. As I looked at her, I only felt pity. "Are you satisfied now? I've been expelled. I worked so hard to get into a university, and you ruined it. You ruined it yourself." I spoke calmly. "I'm telling you, I love him, and he loves me. So what if you got me expelled? Sean said he'll figure something out for me. He said he'll take care of me. So what if you've been together for 11 years? He said he's happiest when he's with me. Do you know?" I was even prepared to stay quietly by his side. It wouldn't have mattered if he didn't divorce you. But now that you're divorcing him, I really should thank you. I looked at the furious girl in front of me, speechless. I used to think she was smart. Now it seemed she was just foolish, blinded either by love or anger. Why come to provoke me like this? "So, you were planning to be a mistress all along?" My words choked her. Her face flushed red, and it was clear she had nothing meaningful left to say. "We're not divorced yet. As the legal wife, I can still take in a concubine for him. Just wait." I stood up and left, no longer interested in listening to her nonsense. As soon as I turned away, I arranged for people to go to her hometown and hang banners. The next day, outside her apartment building and at the entrance of the school where her parents worked, there were banners that read, "Lillian's parents educate others, yet their daughter is skilled in seducing married men, seeking to become a mistress, now officially taken in as a concubine." I heard that her father was deeply humiliated at school. When he returned home, he was overwhelmed with anger and ended up hospitalized. Lillian rushed back, only to face her parents' disappointment and blame, as well as condemnation from relatives and neighbors. The incident quickly spread online, followed by waves of criticism and abuse. Meanwhile, my highly capable lawyer successfully recovered the property and the $3 million in cash. Because of the asset preservation order I filed against Sean, he was unable to step in to help her. In the end, Lillian sold all her luxury goods and borrowed money to gather $2 million. Sean, through other channels, borrowed $1 million more to make up the difference. Of course, I kept evidence of that $1 million. It would count as his personal debt after the divorce. Lillian's side was in chaos. Sean's situation was even worse. Due to our divorce lawsuit, his company's financing was stalled indefinitely. Because of the household debts, he refused to agree to the divorce. Yet he had no way to prove that I had deliberately transferred assets. The divorce process dragged on and on. The two of them, each overwhelmed, were no longer each other's source of happiness. Lillian blamed him for not caring about her. The promises he made to resolve her academic situation fell through. He couldn't even show up when her father was hospitalized. Now she was left with a ruined future, a damaged reputation, her parents' reproach, and online harassment. And Sean no longer saw in her the liveliness and joy he once did, only a burden, a set of chains. Chapter 10. Under the pressure that his company's financing could no longer be delayed, Sean finally acknowledged the household debt and agreed to my divorce terms. However, he added one condition, that the shares I held in his company could only be sold to him. And so, burdened with tens of millions in debt, he divorced me. He thought he had saved the company, but I had already made my move during his final round of financing through my own investment network, joining forces with other shareholders to push him out of the company. When the financing was completed, he was out. On the day he left the company, I went there on purpose to watch. I saw him carrying a cardboard box, walking out of his office in silence, leaving the workspace, leaving the battlefield he had fought on for years. Strangely, my heart didn't feel as satisfied as I had imagined. On the day the company went public, we rang the bell at NASDAQ. No one remembered Sean, the founder. Perhaps some did, but no one would ever mention him again. Somewhere, in an unnoticed corner, he was probably watching in sorrow as the child he had painstakingly nurtured drifted further and further away from him. After everything was over, I gave myself a break and went to Africa, the trip we had always planned but never realized. I saw children living in poverty yet still full of hope. I experienced the awe-inspiring migration of wild animals. Standing on the vast and primal grasslands, I finally let go of those 11 years. Whether good or bad, they were all in the past. The next time I heard about Sean was 2 years later. At a tech forum, I heard he had started another business. But unfortunately, it wasn't going well. The product lacked competitiveness, and all the money he invested had gone to waste. He was buried in debt again. I ran into him again at an investment conference. He was there seeking funding, and I was there as an investor. He went from table to table, drinking with potential investors. He was still wearing the suit I had bought for him before, but now it no longer fit. His thin frame couldn't hold it up, making him look worn and defeated. At another table, I sat surrounded by people eager to secure my investment, treating me with respect. From afar, our eyes met briefly, like strangers. I saw him clutch his stomach. His old gastric illness must have flared up again. Back when he first started his business, he had damaged his stomach from excessive drinking. Later, when the company grew, he no longer needed to drink like that. And with my careful care, he had recovered. Now, it was a pity for the stomach I had once nursed back to health. After the gathering ended, I sat in my Cullinan and saw Lillian, thin, pale, and simply dressed, helping Sean into a taxi. In a way, she got exactly what she had wished for. After returning from my trip, I heard updates about them. It was said that Lillian's parents had retired early out of shame and moved away. Lillian couldn't continue her studies, but she still stayed by Sean's side. accompanying him in his new venture. Some friends in the circle even asked me if I wanted to keep making things difficult for them. I refused. With the stigma of misusing company funds to spend on a mistress, combined with the ever-changing nature of the tech industry, Sean would never have a chance to make a comeback. He was destined to walk a difficult, impoverished path with Lillian. At this point, it was enough. A hand reached over and clasped mine tightly. A voice with a smile asked, "What are you looking at?" I turned my head and looked at the man in the passenger seat. I held his hand back. Our fingers interlocked, my face full of happiness. "Looking at you." He broke into a bright smile. Sean was right. Young people really do bring a certain liveliness and excitement. Extra Sean. Chapter 1. Sean spotted Nadia at a glance, surrounded by people, dressed in a custom-made suit, her every gesture radiating elegance. She handled the crowd around her with ease, engaging effortlessly with powerful figures discussing investment projects worth hundreds of millions. That circle was now far beyond his reach. In the end, the two of them had become people from entirely different worlds. It had been over 2 years since they last met. The previous time was at the company's IPO bell-ringing ceremony, and even then, he had only watched her silently from the crowd. And now, seeing her again, he lowered his head and glanced at his ill-fitting suit. It was a style from 3 years ago. With a bitter smile, he looked away. There was no time for lingering thoughts. He turned anxiously, searching for anyone, willing to invest in his new company. More than 2 years ago, on the eve of Cedia Tech's IPO, he had been forced out and started over, founding his new company, Synopsis Tech. Unfortunately, without resources or competitive products, the company was struggling. If he couldn't secure investment soon, it wouldn't last more than a month. Investors he once wouldn't even spare a glance had now become his lifeline. For just a few million in funding, he drank glass after glass. President Lopez, if this were your old Cedia Tech, forget 2 million, even 10 million just to get a stake. I'd offer it with both hands. But your current Synopsis. I think I'll pass. Martin, if I could build Cedia, I can build Synopsis too. Investing now will definitely pay off. Martin, one of the few still willing to exchange a few words with him, shook his head before Sean could finish and walked away. President Lopez, the investment circle doesn't have confidence in Synopsis. You'd better think of another way. Another investor nearby patted his shoulder kindly as advice. Sean nodded in thanks. He knew the reality all too well, but he couldn't accept it. The banquet was coming to an end. Once again, he would leave empty-handed. He had attended one investment dinner after another. The stomach condition Nadia had once carefully nursed back to health had returned. Pain surged through his body as he clutched his stomach and headed toward the restroom. Just as he reached the door, voices drifted out. Sean's really pitiful now. Ever since he got kicked out of Cedia, he's never been able to make a comeback. Synopsis' products aren't competitive, and his reputation in both the tech and investment circles is ruined. Who would invest in him? He brought this on himself. Nadia is incredible, and he still dared to cheat. The fact that he can still show his face in this circle means she showed him mercy. How many successful men don't have bad intentions, but their wives usually keep things under control? Him? Completely overestimating himself. Hey, sounds like you've got experience. Ha ha. The conversation gradually turned crude, but Sean had long grown used to such talk about him. The group came out of the restroom and saw Sean's pale face. They knew he had heard everything. If this had been 3 years ago, they would have apologized nervously. But now, they simply smiled and walked away. Chapter 2. By the time Sean returned to the banquet hall, it was already empty. Clutching his aching stomach, he went downstairs. Lillian was waiting in the lobby. When she saw him step out of the elevator, she hurried over. Did you get any investment? No. Why not? The company can't hold on much longer, and we're out of money too. Back then, how did you even fall into Nadia's trap and get kicked out? The company was about to go public. You wouldn't be this broke now. Lillian didn't notice his discomfort at all, continuing to complain non-stop. Over the past 2 years, the fall from their former heights had long worn away her admiration for him. Lillian, my stomach hurts. He remembered when Cedia Tech had just been founded. He used to attend endless dinners back then too, but Nadia would always accompany him or prepare medicine and food to protect his stomach. Later, when the company stabilized, She even found a skilled traditional doctor and personally made medicinal meals for him. Your stomach's always been like that. Just take some painkillers later. Now. All Lillian could offer was a casual suggestion. The admiration she once had turned into indifference. The two got into a taxi. Sean's car had long been sold to cover expenses. Just before getting in, he caught sight of Nadia sitting in a Cullinan. There was someone new beside her. She looked at that man with light in her eyes, the same way she once looked at him. Whether it was jealousy from that moment, the damp, sweaty smell inside the taxi, or the pain in his stomach, a wave of nausea surged up. Seeing he was about to vomit, the driver immediately shouted, "Don't throw up in the car. If you do, you'll have to pay extra." Lillian quickly pulled out a plastic bag from her purse and handed it to him. Sean looked at the bag, then at Lillian, her brows furrowed, irritation written all over her face. He forced the nausea down, turned his head toward the window, and gripped the plastic bag tightly, veins bulging in his hand. The driver muttered under his breath, "Thought people coming out of there were all big shots with money." Rain began to fall outside, the sound of droplets hitting the window loud and relentless. Beside him, Lillian kept complaining, "It's been 2 years, the company's drowning in debt. I thought you could build another Cedia, but you turned out to be nothing, and now we owe so much money. We should have invested that money elsewhere or bought property back then. Now we have nothing. I really... For you. I couldn't even finish college. I've suffered so much, and I have nothing to show for it. I haven't bought clothes in almost 2 years. Even basic living expenses have to be calculated carefully. I'm only in my 20s. Her quiet complaints and sobs made the already cramped space feel even more suffocating. Wasn't this the path you chose yourself? You were the one who came to me in the first place. Have you forgotten? This wasn't the first time she had complained. In the past, Sean would silently endure it, but this time, he didn't want to bear it alone anymore. His voice turned cold, laced with sarcasm and anger, as he glared at her, making her shudder. After a long moment, he looked away again, staring out at the rain-streaked window. Chapter 3. How had things come to this? Sean clenched his right fist and slammed it hard against the seat beside him. Yet the frustration in his chest refused to dissipate. He and Nadia had walked together for 11 years. From that very first glance in university, the girl who watched him embarrass himself had already taken root in his heart. Her confidence and grace drew all his attention. Yet deep inside, there was a trace of inferiority he himself had never fully acknowledged. So even though he liked her, he waited for her to take the first step. Only after he was certain of her wholehearted devotion did he finally confess, letting things fall into place naturally. Nadia was exceptional. She came from a good family. She led Sean, a boy from a small town, into countless firsts, teaching him so much. Through her, he accessed a higher world. She managed their lives flawlessly, allowing him to pursue his ambitions without worry. And eventually, Cedia succeeded, but he became arrogant. Lillian appeared at the peak of his success. The admiration in her eyes, her dependence as a delicate young woman, these were things Nadia had never given him. For a moment, his male ego was deeply satisfied. He had never thought about divorce, but he couldn't resist those seemingly pure, admiring eyes. He thought he could have Nadia at home, and when he wanted something easy, he could go to Lillian. What he forgot was that Nadia was never someone who would accept a loss. Reality proved it wasn't Nadia who couldn't live without Sean, it was Sean who was nothing without Nadia. When he was forced out of Cedia Tech, Nadia hadn't completely crushed him. The money he got from selling his shares was enough for him to live a modest but stable life. But his unwillingness to accept defeat, combined with Lillian's subtle but constant prodding, having tasted a life of material comfort, pushed him to start another business. This time, however, there was no innovation, no network of connections. On top of that, the stigma of cheating and misusing company funds, along with the rapidly evolving tech industry, he could no longer rise again. The two of them dragged their exhausted bodies upstairs. When they opened the door, they were greeted by a chaotic mess. Lillian had never been good at managing a household before. Sean would still tidy up when he had time, thinking she was young. But today, he had no strength left. He stepped over piles of takeout trash on the coffee table, ignored the clothes scattered across the sofa, clean or dirty, and walked heavily into the bedroom. He collapsed onto the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. Lillian approached cautiously. Sean, as he was today, made her uneasy. Is your stomach still hurting? Do you want to take some painkillers? Did you pick up the medical report from last time? The pain in his stomach could no longer be ignored. He had been so busy that he had forgotten to collect the results from his last checkup. I forgot. I'll go get it tomorrow. I've been really busy lately, handling the company and the house. Sean closed his eyes, no longer able to listen to her. I'll go myself, he said. Chapter 4. Late-stage stomach cancer. Sean looked at the results in his hand. Surprisingly, he wasn't shocked. Instead, there was a strange sense of finality, like everything had settled into place. The doctor was still talking, but Sean's thoughts had already drifted far away. Maybe this was his retribution. Sitting on a bench in the hospital lobby, watching people come and go, his mind raced about the company's tight finances, about where he could find money to save his life. His desire to live surged uncontrollably. Then, suddenly, he thought of something. He felt a trace of relief, grateful for how Nadia had once taken care of him. He remembered how he had opposed her decision to buy insurance that cost hundreds of thousands every year. And now, it had become his lifeline. He no longer had the strength to manage the company. Xinjiang had to be sold before it completely collapsed. Although it wouldn't cover all the debt, he had to cut his losses in time. Sean began to plan everything step by step. This time, he was far more grounded. Lillian only found out after the company had been sold. She had always been clinging to the dream of becoming a wealthy wife. The dream of returning to a life of material comfort had kept her by Sean's side through 2 years of hardship. Now that dream shattered in an instant. She completely lost control. Sean, you bastard! Didn't you promise me a good life? You sold the company behind my back. What are you trying to do? I've suffered so much following you. Are you even a man? You ruined me. Sean, looking at the person crying and screaming in front of him, all he felt was regret. I have late-stage stomach cancer. One sentence silenced her completely. I've made a plan. The company couldn't hold on, it had to be sold. There's still some debt left after the sale, but selling this house and using my previous insurance payout should cover most of it. As for my illness, it's also covered by insurance. So, if we live carefully and find ordinary jobs, we can still get by. Sell the house? I don't agree. Go find the insurance policy I had you pay into. I need to calculate it. Sean glanced at her and continued. The house was bought before marriage. Whether to sell it or not is my decision. But the debt was incurred after marriage. So you either listen to me, or you walk away carrying half the debt yourself. Lillian froze, clearly shaken. Sean waited, giving her time to process. Insurance? What insurance? After sitting there for a long time, she finally came back to her senses and could only cooperate. The one I told you to pay into every year. Nadia researched it thoroughly. It was the most suitable policy for people like us in business. It costs over 100,000 a year, but now it's life-saving. Looking at Lillian's empty, confused expression, a bad feeling rose in his chest. Don't tell me you didn't pay it. Lillian lowered her head, her voice trembling with tears. I don't understand these things. I just thought over 100,000 a year was too expensive. I really didn't know. At that moment, Sean didn't even have the energy left for anger or despair. He didn't even care to ask where the money had gone. Chapter 5. Sean wished all of this were just a dream. That when he woke up, he would return to 3 years ago. He would stay far away from Lillian and protect the home he had with Nadia. But there is no such thing as regret in life. Every step comes with its consequences. Without access to expensive treatments, Sean didn't last long. A year later, he passed away. Before his death, Lillian took care of him unwillingly, cleaning up his vomit, staying awake day and night. In her early 20s, she had already lost all the vitality of youth. It wasn't because of deep love. It was because she feared that if she abandoned him, she would be left with half the debt. At least Sean had made some arrangements for her. He sold the house and liquidated his remaining personal investments, paying off most of the debt. What little was left for Lillian was negligible. Late at night, alone in a cramped rented room, Lillian sat on her narrow bed. At times, she thought of the bright future she once had, the glamorous life of a successful professional. At other times, she imagined herself as a wealthy wife, living happily with Sean. But reality was harsh. She had no home to return to, no one to rely on. Her odd jobs were unstable, coming and going. Even those working alongside her kept their distance. At an age when she should have been blooming, she appeared unstable, sometimes filled with bitterness, sometimes lost and hollow.